News just in, the Movement for Democratic Change is preparing court papers to force the ZEC to release the election results. Let's go to Harare now. Our reporter Peter Ndoro is standing by. Peter, over to you.
Colin, thanks very much indeed. You're absolutely right. It's all happening here in Harare. It's been a dramatic last 48 hours, from the final speeches to the drama that we saw in terms of party leaders sending messages and having press conferences the day before the elections, then the elections. And of course, today has been about the results. And we were promised that at 3 o'clock, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission will start announcing its first results. But then it was pushed to 3:30. And now we've just been told that it's been pushed to 4:30. We're not sure why. They haven't given us an explanation. But whilst all of this was happening, the MDC were holding a press conference, and they've been saying that, look, we're doing our own collation, and so far we've got a significant lead. I think something as ambitious as 70%. And they're saying they're waiting for the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to announce its results. Their fear is, it seems, that they think that the ZEC might be doing something to change the results. It's going to be pretty difficult because, again, these results are posted on each polling station and then collated, and so it could be quite easy to audit and check from the original sources. But as you say, they're wanting now to go to court to force ZEC to announce those results. To help us try and unpack some of these developments, I'm now joined by Professor David Moore from the University of Johannesburg, who's here in Harare. Thanks very much for joining us. MDC saying, look, tell us those results. They've been breaking the law up until now, announcing what they call are the results. What do you think's going on?
Well, I think we've got to be very careful here. In 2008, Tendai Biti announced a victory, and that was treasonable, and he went to prison. If you announce a prediction or based on current trends, and if you're pushing ZEC to actually make the announcement, I don't think there's really that much of a problem, and it would look pretty bad if ZANU-PF and the police came in and arrested somebody for treason again. They've got a lot of confidence. They've had a lot of steam building. And I suspect they might be right, not 70%, but they might be sensing a real victory coming up. So they're going to keep up the pressure, and opposition politics, of course, is always like this, in not just Africa. You know, remember Donald Trump and those Hillary Clinton things, Hillary Clinton. So these next few days, and I don't think ZEC will have the results ready by today. I don't think the people in civil society who are running the alternative tabulations are going to be faster than ZEC. It's going to be a race to the finish. This is the other race. Who's going to win this one? The officials or the civil society? Civil society has become very sophisticated because, again, in 2008, they were doing the collation thing as well. Although I think they also announced the results too early, because those results that ZESNA announced ended up to be 6 weeks later the same results as ZEC got. They announced them too early, so they have to be very careful. Their credibility is at stake. I think the Citizens Manifesto tabulations now is about 350 polling stations, so you can see they're very careful, and you have to rely on citizens. I think the 21% business was in the ZESNA original report, but it wasn't in the final report, and your colleague Andrew Harding raised it for the BBC at their presser. And he said, what about this 21% that David Coulthard posted based on the preliminary ZESNA report, that the V11s, which are those posted ballots, did not have the president's name on them, therefore this election would be illegal? Wouldn't that open a can of worms? But again, often these legal battles go on for months and months and months, and the election is long forgotten. So the water is still flowing under the bridge. The bridge is not sinking yet.
Is this a strategy? Is it a tactic by the opposition party to be doing this, to be posting as much information, inverted commas, as possible, and forcing the hand of ZEC, almost suggesting they don't want to give them time to try and fix things?
Yeah, no, I think you have a good point. It's a good strategy, actually. And perhaps to test the cohesiveness of ZANU-PF. Would there be some people in ZANU-PF wanting to say, these guys have lost it. I mean, lost it in the sense of going too far, and we should clamp down, versus the supposedly more cautious and slow approach of the crocodile. I think Emerson Mnangagwa can play a de Klerk role here now. And I'm not the first one to say this. Chris Landsberg, my colleague at UJ, raised it right after the coup. So he could go down in history as a real nation builder. Look, we had the coup. We got rid of this tyrant. We're sorry. Let's apologize for very many things. Maybe they would get amnesty, keep their money, keep their businesses. Maybe have, if they wanted to push the idea of a runoff, maybe stop the runoff and have a national convention or something where there's a kind of new dispensation. But Mnangagwa could play that real de Klerk role. And de Klerk got a Nobel Peace Prize for it. So that would be the statesman-like thing to do if it's a small victory for the MDC. And that would also, I think, because if there's a runoff, I don't think anybody from, the young people in the streets, the young soldiers, will take it as legitimate.
All right, so what happens in the next 24 hours perhaps is going to be quite critical, starting with the first announcements of results. And people are going to extrapolate, and we don't know how much they've counted, but they're going to listen to these initial results and start making up their own minds. And I suppose that the leadership, both sides, are going to have to step up and be leaders. It sounds like the MDC, they've threatened before that if they don't win, they're going to take to the streets.
Yeah, I think these wouldn't necessarily be the case. I don't think the MDC leadership would take people to the streets. The people from the streets might be demanding that their leadership take more action. And so it would be, the statesmen, the senior people in security would have to keep cool. Why not have celebrations for a free and fair election, or celebrate the free and fair election or the credible election that we think is going to happen, rather than celebrating a victory which nobody can really say is going to happen until Friday or Thursday, and then there's a presidential inauguration on Monday, and we'll all be invited.
So let's assume a worst case scenario that the opposition perhaps is not happy with the result and they do take to the streets. The president's hand is going to be forced. We haven't seen the army out on the streets at this stage. Might that be a trigger, or would that be a step too far?
It would probably be a step too far, because I'm not sure if the army is united. So some senior people in the army would caution, keep us off the streets. Young soldiers, from what I understand, they're very closer to the MDC. They want real change. Their 22% raise that they were granted is probably nothing. Teachers have been given 17%. Nurses, I'm not sure, probably the 17%. But remember, the nurses were fired by Chwenga. So you might have 2 or 3 contending streams of thought within the security apparatus. The police, I think, would be relatively quiet because they were ousted, basically, in the coup. So you might have some soldiers, I'm not sure how old they would be, who would be very loyal to Chwenga if they felt that the Chwenga faction was going to lose out in the Mnangagwa-Chamisa agreement, right? So they might go that way. And that might be actually meaning more action. Then you would get the professional soldiers who would just caution stability and order and respect for the rule of law. And then you might have the younger soldiers who would not want to go out against their friends, neighbors, cousins, who would be supporting the MDC.
Do you think that, the verification process is what's probably going to take the longest, but do you think at this stage already that the ZEC might already know what the provisional total result is? Now you're being an agent provocateur.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's too early.
Yeah, and it would have been pretty hard to stuff it. Nikov wasn't here this time. I really think they are trying to do their most professional. Yeah.
One of the results that we're going to get is that women candidates, first of all, only 9% of total candidates, but even those candidates didn't really do well. What is that telling us?
Well, as you know well, as a Zimbabwean yourself, it's a pretty patriarchal society. Both political leaders haven't been the best on gender issues. I'm not sure how the women's caucus works in these parties. There's supposed to be a quota, isn't there, a gender quota? So that's not looking too good. But let's wait till 2023 and see where because I think that's really where, look, you could sort of, again, back to the Mandela and de Klerk thing, you have kind of a government of national unity, or at least a stabilization, and then, you know, if Chamisa does well, the alliance will get stronger, keep together better, the Tendai Ibijis, the Welsh Manubes, the young intellectuals who have been all around the world and eager to come back. So many people are eager to come back. 5 years isn't a long, it's a long time in politics, but it's not a long time in history. So I think, assuming, and I think I'm sometimes I'm too optimistic, assuming this all goes smoothly, there's a modus vivendi of some sort. And look, Munagog was, nobody's quite sure how old he is. Chiwenga's mid-60s. You've got a new generation which is really, really, really focused on change. For now, Nelson Chamisa is part of it. If Nelson Chamisa is going to be part of this government or leading this government, he's got a lot of technocrats he can come in. I mean,